They remembered me when it was time to pour the drinks, share the secrets, and shoulder the blame. But my birthday? Silence. So I stood up mid-dinner, wheeled out my suitcase, and dropped one word that made the whole room freeze. Divorce. I thought I was just leaving a loveless marriage. I didn't realize I was walking straight into a buried past, one that involved fake, names, secret children, and a lie so big it reached beyond the grave. My name is Margaret Brooks, 60 years. A lifetime lived, it feels, mostly for other people. Today was my 60th birthday. It was also, by a twist of fate, the first day of third grade for Mason, my grandson. A day for celebration, I'd hoped. A day to finally feel seen. The scent of roast chicken, rich with rosemary and thyme, filled the kitchen. Mashed potatoes steamed gently, and the golden crust of baked mac and cheese promised comfort. I'd been at it all afternoon, each dish a favorite, a silent plea for a happy family dinner. Brian, my son, arrived first with Mason, a brightly colored cake box swinging from his hand. "Smells incredible, Mom," he said, his smile easy. Mason, still bubbling with first-day excitement, chattered about his new teacher, his voice a bright spark in the house. Later, the familiar click of the front door announced Harold, my husband of 3 decades, and Melissa, my daughter-in-law. Melissa, ever poised, offered her usual polished smile. "Margaret, this looks wonderful. Mason, you absolutely have to thank Grandma. She made all this just for your big back-to-school night." Harold, though, scanned the table, his gaze sharp, critical. It landed on the empty space where wine glasses usually stood. His face, already set in its usual lines of dissatisfaction, darkened further. "You cooked all this," he snapped, his voice a low, familiar rumble of displeasure. "And you didn't even think to get some wine?" The warmth in the room seemed to dim. Brian, ever the peacemaker, jumped in. "Dad, let's not start, okay? Not tonight." He placed the cake in the center of the table, his cheerfulness a little forced. "Come on, let's do cake and candles first. For Mason!" Harold's comment was a familiar sting, but Brian's intervention, Mason's eager eyes, softened it. I moved to help with the cake. As Brian lifted the lid, the fluorescent kitchen light glinted off the icing. "Congratulations, Mason." That was all. No festive 60, no hint of a birthday greeting for me. My heart, which had dared to hope, sank. I leaned closer, searching. Nothing. I'd even reminded Brian, gently, just a few days before. "My big 60 is the same day as Mason starts school, you know," I'd said, trying for a light tone. Hoping for a proper celebration this year. To feel remembered. He'd nodded, already scrolling on his phone. "Sure, Mom. Got it." Clearly he hadn't. Brian, oblivious, was fumbling with the candle packet. "Mom, what are you doing? Where's the lighter? Mason needs to make a wish." From the head of the table, Harold barked, "Did you go deaf? He asked for the lighter. What are you just standing there for?" I swallowed, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "Brian," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "aside from Mason's big day, do you happen to remember what else today is?" He frowned, genuine confusion on his face. "What do you mean, Mum?" "She's always got to make things complicated," Harold grumbled, thumping his water glass down. "Just get the damn lighter." My eyes flicked to Mason, his small face alight with anticipation. Not in front of him. I turned, walked into the kitchen, the sound of my own footsteps unnaturally loud. I retrieved the lighter and handed it to Brian. The family launched into a clumsy, off-key rendition of "Happy School Day to You." Laughter, chatter, celebration. I felt like a shadow in my own home. Dinner had barely started when Mason's fork clattered to the polished wood floor. Predictably, Melissa glanced at me. Brian and Harold were deep in conversation, oblivious. Mason, accustomed to being the center of attention, twisted in his seat. "Grandma," he called out, his voice clear and demanding, "I dropped my fork. Go get me another one." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't move. I stayed seated, my hands quiet in my lap. My voice when I spoke was calm. Mason, honey, you know where the silverware drawer is? You can get one yourself. Mason's lower lip trembled. He kicked his mother's chair. Mom, Grandma won't get my fork. Melissa, ever the smooth operator, tried to soothe him. Then, turning to me with that fixed, sweet smile, she raised her voice slightly. Margaret, where do you keep the extra forks? I'll just grab one for him. Before I could form a reply, Harold shot me a venomous glare. Go get him a fork, he commanded, his tone final. Brian, almost as an afterthought, reached out as if to stop Melissa. It's okay, Mel. Mum will get it. You don't need to. Something inside me, a tightly wound spring held down for 30 years, finally snapped. Quietly, definitively. I stood, the scraping of my chair echoing in the sudden lull. But I didn't turn towards the kitchen. My feet, as if with a will of their own, carried me down the hallway to my bedroom. Muffled, confused voices trailed behind me. I pulled my old worn suitcase from the top of the wardrobe. Dust motes danced in the dim light from the hallway. My hands were surprisingly steady as I opened drawers, folding clothes, sensible blouses, threadbare cardigans. Then, from under the bed, I retrieved a shoebox. Bank statements, years of them, every penny earned from my little food stall at the farmer's market, a secret hoard of independence. Harold's paychecks, when they made it home, mostly vanished on poker nights. After Brian was born, I'd stopped my office job. Harold always complained I spent too much. So I stopped asking. The stall was my quiet defiance. I'd thought of leaving then, many times. But Brian, I didn't want him from a broken home, so I endured. Endured Harold's drunken rages, the way he'd smash a glass if his temper flared. Endured his mother's constant cutting criticisms. I was never good enough. 30 years, a lifetime. Wiping a tear I hadn't realized had fallen, I clicked the suitcase shut. I walked back into the dining room, the wheels of the suitcase clicking a stark rhythm on the wooden floor. The strained laughter had resumed. Mason had a new fork. Melissa must have retrieved it. She glanced at me, a flicker of cold dismissal in her eyes, then looked down, continuing her meal as if I were invisible. Harold was pouring himself a large whiskey. The bottle was new. Brian's doing, no doubt, a treat for his father. My heart clenched. I loathed alcohol, loathed the loud, violent stranger it made Harold. Brian knew. He'd seen it. Why did he enable him? I stopped at the table, my shadow falling across the remnants of the meal. My voice, when I spoke, was steady. I want a divorce. The air crackled. Mason's eyes widened. Melissa's fork hit her plate with a clatter. Brian froze, mid-chew. Harold erupted. He slammed his glass down, whiskey sloshing. He glanced at Melissa and Mason, a fraction of restraint, then roared, "Have you lost your mind? You're nearly 70 and you want a divorce now." Brian shot up. "Mom, what are you saying? We're trying to have a nice dinner. Why ruin everything?" Melissa clutched Mason, her expression unreadable, a spectator at her own family drama. A laugh, cold and hollow, escaped me. Ruin everything? After decades in this house, I'm still the most dispensable one. I gestured to my suitcase. I'll be at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow morning, Harold, you're coming with me to sign the divorce papers. Harold's face was puce. I'm not agreeing. Are you insane? Tearing this family apart. What will people say? Dad's right, Brian echoed. Come on, Mum. You're too old for this. Think of the shame. Harold, emboldened, poured another drink, downing it with a smug air. That look. It was the final unbearable insult. Brian, perhaps seeing the storm in my eyes, tried again. Mom, you're not serious. Just because Dad had a few drinks. I'll stay, I'll watch him. We can fix this. Just don't mention divorce. Anything but that. Anything but that. Empty words. He'd never truly defended me. A bitter smile. Brian, do you even remember my birthday? He froze. Silence. Of course not. I'm done, I said. Done trying. Done sacrificing. I didn't mention the cancer then, the 6-month prognosis. It felt too raw, too mine. But it was the ultimate catalyst. If not now, then when? I turned, suitcase in hand. Melissa blocked my path, Mason a small shield before her. "Margaret, please," she pleaded, her voice syrupy. "We're family. Rough patches happen. Didn't we agree not to bring up divorce?" I stepped back. "I've changed my mind. After the divorce, I don't want any of you contacting me again." "None of us?" Brian rushed to the door. "Mom, what is going on? Changed your mind about what?" "What it sounds like," I said. "Ask your wife if you need clarification." "Margaret, you can't." Melissa grabbed my arm, tears welling. "Mason, who'll look after him? Are you okay with him eating junk food? Don't you care?" It was so ludicrous, I laughed. "Have you finished? Isn't he your son? Your responsibility? You're adults. Still not weaned?" I shook her off. "I'm tired of your act. Today I live for me. Move." Mason, seeing me shrug off his mother, lunged and shoved me. "Grandma, don't touch my mom." Brian surged forward. "Mom, you've crossed the line. Apologize to Melissa." Harold joined in, yelling, accusing. Chaos. It hurt. Deeply. These were my people. If you won't let me go in peace, a cold resolve formed, then no one walks away clean. You want a show? You'll get one. I took a breath. All right, I'll apologize. I turned to Melissa, a slight bow. "I'm sorry, Melissa. I shouldn't have pushed you." She looked startled, then recovered. "It's okay." "So," I said, addressing Brian and Mason, "if someone does wrong, they apologize." Mason nodded. Brian, after a hesitation, nodded too. "Good." A chilling laugh. "That's all I needed." I pushed my suitcase aside. "Now, about your father. Did you know," my voice cut like glass, "your father has another family?" Harold lunged, grabbing my arm. "What devilry are you spewing now? In front of the children?" "Dad, let her finish," Brian said, a surprising firmness in his voice, stepping between us. "Am I lying, Melissa?" I asked. "You were with me when I found out. You wanted to be a spectator. Not tonight." All eyes on her. She stared at the floor. I don't know," she stammered. "Margaret was upset." "Of course." I gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Her name is White, 113B Lincoln Street, apartment 302. Go knock. Your brother might answer. He's 31. Married with a daughter. So, Harold, besides Mason, you also have a granddaughter." The words hit like stones. Harold paled. That day in the grocery store, years ago, I'd seen him with her, happy, doting. Melissa had been there, witnessed my breakdown. Later, she'd convinced me to stay, for appearances. "Men make mistakes," she'd cooed. "Just pretend." I thought I could, until the diagnosis. Cancer. My reward for silence. Why should I be the one to pay? "Let's go, Brian," I said. "Let's see if I'm lying." He grabbed Harold, stormed out. I followed, suitcase bumping behind me. Lincoln Street confirmed everything. Brian exploded. Years of his father's dismissiveness. "Ask your mother," erupted. He lunged at Harold. They fought. Neighbors stared. Sirens wailed. Arrests. From the police car, Brian, face contorted, yelled, "You're selfish, Mum. You blew this up for a divorce. Couldn't you just hold it together? Are you happy now?" Harold snarled, "You ruined everything. I had it under control." Melissa, voice like ice. "Margaret, I told you not to drag this out. Now everyone knows. Those properties he sold. We could have salvaged something." They all blamed me. Until Mason, bless his pure heart, whispered, "But Grandpa messed up. Why yell at Grandma?" Melissa quickly shushed him, her hand over his mouth. His eyes, when he looked up, were different. Cold. I turned, walked back to the house, Harold's house, retrieved my suitcase, and stepped into the cool night, the door clicking shut with a sound like a breaking chain. The first few nights at the hotel were strange. I kept waking up at 3 a.m. sharp, disoriented by the silence. No snores from Harold. No creaking floorboards, no one yelling from the other room. Just the quiet hum of the AC and the ticking of a clock I didn't recognize. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out if I felt free or just hollow. It wasn't peace yet. It was shock in a bathrobe. By the third morning, I called Joan. "I did it," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed with my feet barely touching the floor. I really walked away. There was a pause on the line, then her voice, warm and fierce. "You're not staying in that sterile hotel another night. Pack up, Jason's coming to get you." I protested, of course. "Joan, I'm not about to barge in." "Margaret, hush. You wiped my kid's nose when I had the flu for a week. You taught him how to ride a bike. Your family." Jason and his wife Emily opened their door like they'd been expecting me for years. Their house was full of noise and warmth, and the scent of fresh basil. Emily hugged me like I hadn't just burned every bridge behind me. "You've done so much for us," she said, guiding me in. "Now let us return the favor." I didn't know what to do with kindness like that. Not anymore. The guest room had soft blankets and a little pot of lavender on the nightstand. It smelled like calm. I didn't cry until the lights were out. A few days later, I started going through the small box of things I'd managed to bring with me. Mostly papers, a photo album, and one oddly heavy item. An old wooden jewelry box, the kind with clawed feet and a music key that never worked. It used to belong to Agnes, Harold's mother. I hadn't opened it in years. I almost threw it out, honestly. But something made me stop. Curiosity, spite, habit. Inside, some old love letters that weren't mine, a cracked brooch, and a stack of yellowed handkerchiefs. But under all that, tucked beneath a delicate strip of lace, a flash drive. I stared at it for a long time. My first thought, probably Harold's, or maybe Brian's, some old tax file. But then I noticed the label, written in Agnes's handwriting. For Margaret, watch only if I'm gone. My fingers trembled. I walked straight to Jason's office. "Can I borrow your laptop?" I asked, holding out the flash drive like it might bite. Jason blinked. "Of course." He moved aside and let me sit down. As the screen flickered to life, I felt the room shrink around me. One video file, no title, just a timestamp from 2 years ago. I clicked play. And there she was. Agnes, older than I remembered, her skin papery, lips thin, eyes sharp. She sat in a floral nightgown, propped up in bed, a single lamp casting long shadows across her face. She looked straight into the camera. "If you're seeing this, I'm probably dead," she said plainly. "Good. About time." Jason looked at me, eyebrows climbing. "What is this?" "I don't know," I whispered, "but I think we're about to." Agnes leaned closer to the camera. "I need to confess something, about Harold, and what I did to you, Margaret." I froze. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the laptop fan. Jason didn't say a word. He just reached over and gently squeezed my hand. Something inside me braced, because I already knew. This wasn't just going to be a confession, it was going to be an earthquake. The screen flickered to life, showing Harold's mother, Agnes. She looked older, frailer than in my last memories of her, her face etched with a grim sort of resolve. The lighting was poor, a single bedside lamp casting long shadows. She was speaking directly to the camera, her voice thin but surprisingly steady. "If anyone is watching this," she began, her gaze unnervingly direct, like a final judgment, "it means I'm gone, and it means things have likely fallen apart." A small dry cough punctuated her words. "I need to set the record straight, about Harold and Margaret." My breath caught in my throat. Jason glanced at me, his brow furrowed with concern. Agnes continued, her eyes never leaving the lens. I knew about Harold's other woman, Denise. I knew for years, almost from when it started." She paused, her eyes darting nervously off screen for a moment. "He confessed it to me, you see, crying like a baby, the fool. Didn't know what to do with himself." A cold knot formed in my stomach. all those years of her pointed criticisms, her subtle and not so subtle insinuations that I was the one lacking, and she knew. She knew Harold was the philanderer. I told him to end it, of course, Agnes said, a hint of self-righteousness in her tone. But he was always weak. And then Margaret found out. The first time, years and years ago. She was referring to a vague rumor I'd confronted Harold about, which he'd vehemently denied. Agnes had staunchly backed him up, scolding me for my overactive imagination and lack of trust. She wanted to leave him then, Agnes stated, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. And I couldn't allow that. The shame of it. The scandal. It would have been terrible for Brian. Terrible for the family name. Her eyes, old and sharp, seemed to pierce right through the screen, right into me. So I talked to her. I told her it was her wifely duty to stay, to keep the family unit intact, to forgive and forget. I reminded her of her vows. I might have suggested that if she left, she'd find herself with nothing, that Harold would see to it. The air in Jason's quiet study felt heavy, suffocating. Agnes wasn't just confessing. She was coolly detailing years of calculated emotional manipulation, of blackmail. She was a good girl, Margaret, Agnes said, a strange flicker, almost like pity in her voice. Too good, perhaps. She listened. She stayed. For Brian. For appearances. She let out a sigh, a dry, rattling sound. I suppose at the time, I believed I was doing the right thing. Protecting my son, protecting the family. But it was all built on a lie. A great, rotten lie. And Margaret, she was the one who paid the price. Harold, well, he got to have his cake and eat it too, didn't he? The video ended abruptly. Silence descended, thick and profound. Jason slowly turned to me, his face a mask of shock and sympathy. Margaret, I'm speechless. Tears were streaming down my face, hot and silent. It wasn't just Harold's betrayal. It was his entire family, a united front of silence and manipulation. The weight of it was almost unbearable. She forced me, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. She made me believe I was the one at fault, that leaving was the ultimate failure, the ultimate sin. Over the next few days, Agnes's recorded words replayed endlessly in my mind. Joan was incandescent with fury when I showed her. That dreadful old woman, and Harold, they deserve every bit of exposure they get. The idea, initially terrifying, began to take root. This wasn't just my private grief anymore. This was a truth that had been suppressed for too long, a truth that deserved to see the light of day. Joan knew a young woman, Sylvia, a freelance videographer with a knack for social media. She can help you, Margaret, Joan urged, her eyes shining with conviction. She can make sure people hear this, really hear it. Sylvia was a breath of fresh air, young, energetic, and deeply empathetic. She listened to my story, watched Agnes's chilling confession, her eyes widening with each revelation. This is incredible, Margaret, she said, her voice hushed with awe. And Agnes filmed this herself. It's almost like she had a conscience, deep down, and wanted this out eventually. We need to handle this carefully, Sylvia advised, her professionalism kicking in. Perhaps a brief introduction from you, if you feel up to it, to give it context. Then we can upload it. It could change the narrative significantly. The thought of bearing the family's darkest secret, my own mother-in-law's confession, to the world was daunting. But what more did I have to lose? My reputation was already being dragged through the mud by Harold's self-serving version of events. Sylvia worked with sensitivity and skill. She helped me film a short, dignified introduction, explaining how I'd found the flash drive. We decided to slightly blur Agnes's face in the video, a small nod to decorum. Then, with a deep, steadying breath, Sylvia clicked upload. The video, titled A Mother-in-Law's Deathbed Confession and a Wife's 30 Years of Silence, went live on YouTube, quickly cross-posted to community forums, and even clipped for TikTok. The response was explosive, immediate. Comments poured in, shock, outrage, and overwhelming sympathy. This poor woman. Her husband and meal are absolute monsters. 30 years is a lifetime of lies. Of course, there were the inevitable trolls, but their voices were drowned out by a tidal wave of support. The video was shared, then shared again. Local news blogs picked up the story. My quiet, miserable life, my private pain, was suddenly, irrevocably public. Brian called, his voice a strange mix of disbelief and horror. "Mom, what have you done? Grandma Agnes's video. It's everywhere. People are saying terrible things." "It's the truth, Brian," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. But it makes us all look," he stammered. "Like what, Brian?" I asked, my tone even. "Like a family that valued its pristine image above one woman's happiness and well-being. Because if you recall, that's precisely what we were." Melissa didn't call. Harold remained conspicuously silent. The narrative had been wrested from their control. I was no longer just the bitter, runaway wife. I was a woman who had endured decades of profound deceit, a deceit sanctioned and enforced by the family matriarch herself. The viral video was my first, unexpected taste of public vindication. The storm unleashed by Agnes's video was immense. It brought a strange, bittersweet validation, but also dredged up more layers of pain. Yet, it also galvanized me. I needed to untangle my finances from Harold, completely and irrevocably. I scheduled an appointment at my bank. A young consultant named Travis, with kind, intelligent eyes and a neatly pressed suit, was assigned to my case. As we meticulously reviewed my accounts, separating joint assets, he paused, his brow furrowing as he studied a loan document on his screen. "Mrs. Brooks," he said slowly, his gaze shifting from the monitor to me. "There's a significant mortgage loan here. It was taken out approximately 3 years ago. It's in your name, with Mr. Brooks as a co-signer. Can you tell me about the property it was for?" I stared at him, a cold dread creeping up my spine. "A mortgage? In my name? I haven't taken out any new mortgage in over 2 decades, not since we paid off our main house." Travis tapped a few keys, his expression growing more serious. "The property address listed is 113B Lincoln Street, apartment 302. Denise's apartment. Harold hadn't just had an affair. He'd bought his mistress's love nest using my name, my credit, forging my signature. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it, the depth of the betrayal, left me momentarily speechless. Fraud. He had committed fraud. Travis, witnessing my visible shock, was incredibly gentle and professional. "Margaret," he said, his voice soft but firm, "it appears your signature may indeed have been forged on this document. This is a very serious matter. We need to launch an investigation immediately. If what I suspect is true, this loan is fraudulent, and you are not liable for it." He carefully explained the legal process ahead. Police reports, lawyers, formal disputes. It was yet another battle looming, but this time I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't alone. Travis assured me of the bank's full support in pursuing the fraud. This criminal act was the leverage I hadn't known I possessed. The public shaming from Agnes's viral video had clearly shaken Harold, but this was concrete, prosecutable. This was potential jail time. My newly hired lawyer drafted a very pointed letter. Harold had a stark choice: face fraud charges, which, combined with the damning video, would utterly decimate any shred of reputation he had left, or agree to my terms for the divorce. The terms were straightforward: a clean and final break, a fair and undisputed division of legitimate marital assets, and one final, non-negotiable condition: a public apology. Not just a private murmur to me, but a clear public statement retracting the slander his mistress Denise had begun spreading online after Agnes's video went viral, in a desperate attempt to paint me as the villain. Harold, cornered, terrified, and stripped of his usual bluster, caved. He agreed to everything. The day we were scheduled to finalize the divorce at City Hall was grey and oppressive, the sky weeping a persistent fine drizzle that mirrored the mood. I'd instructed Harold, via my lawyer, to be there at 2:30 p.m., half an hour before our official 3:00 p.m. appointment. He was to be prepared to speak. I'd also dispatched a cryptic message to Denise. City Hall, 3:00 p.m. Let's clear the air, face to face. I knew her vanity and insecurity wouldn't allow her to resist. As I arrived, a small but noticeable crowd had already gathered, drawn by the ongoing online notoriety of the Brooks family saga. Smartphones were out, recording. Harold stood near the grand stone steps, a diminished figure, grey, wrinkled, his usual arrogance replaced by a hunted look. He saw me, and a flicker of deep resentment crossed his eyes, quickly overshadowed by palpable fear. "All right, Harold," I said, my voice calm but carrying clearly in the damp air. "It's time for your statement." He took a shaky, audible breath and began. His voice, usually so booming and self-assured, was thin, reedy. I want to apologize," he mumbled. Then, as if recalling his instructions, he spoke louder. "To Margaret, for the pain, the decades of profound pain I caused her." He haltingly confessed to the affair, to the long years of deceit, and then, the crucial, lawyer-mandated part. "The things Denise White has been saying online about Margaret, they are unequivocally false. They are lies, slander. Margaret was a good wife, a devoted mother. The fault was entirely mine." It was a profoundly humiliating performance for him, and every second was being captured by the impromptu audience. People in the crowd murmured, a few even shook their heads in open disgust, directed at him, not me. When his forced confession was over, we walked into City Hall, side by side, a bizarre, silent parody of a couple. The divorce application itself was an anticlimax. Sign here, initial there. A lifetime of shared history, ending not with a dramatic flourish, but with the mundane scratch of a pen on official paper. At precisely 3 p.m., as we were concluding the paperwork, I saw movement through the imposing doors of City Hall. Denise. She was, as predicted, dressed to the nines in a tight, flamboyant red dress, her makeup heavy, an air of defiant expectation about her, as if she were arriving for a coronation. She scanned the ornate lobby, a predatory glint in her anxious eyes. Then another woman appeared, as planned, elegant, composed, in a tasteful navy suit. This was the actress I'd hired, meticulously briefed by Joan and me. She moved with quiet confidence and an air of understated class. Harold, following my very specific non-negotiable instructions, delivered with the full weight of potential fraud charges via my lawyer, spotted the actress. Without a single glance towards the fuming, expectant Denise, he walked directly to the woman in navy. He took her hand with a practiced, if somewhat stiff, gallantry, and murmured something that, from a distance, looked like a tender endearment. Denise's face. Oh, it was a masterpiece of theatrical shock and dawning fury. She lunged, her voice a strangled squawk, grabbing Harold's arm. "Harold, what is the meaning of this? Who is she?" Harold, proving to be a surprisingly adept actor when his own hide was on the line, yanked his arm free with a look of withering disdain. "Please, madame," he said coolly, his voice carrying clearly to Denise. "I don't believe we've had the pleasure of an introduction." He then turned, offering his arm to the actress, and escorted her out of City Hall, not once looking back. I followed them out a moment later, just as the clerk informed us our official divorce certificate would be ready for collection in 1 week. Denise was on the steps, a collapsing heap of red fabric and sputtering rage, half screaming incoherently into her phone, cursing Harold, cursing me, tears carving messy paths through her carefully applied makeup. It was quite the public meltdown. I strolled over to where she was unraveling, stopping a few feet away. A small, almost playful smile touched my lips. "So," I said, my voice light, conversational, "I heard you two were true love." Her head snapped up. Her eyes were wild, unhinged. She shrieked, a raw, animalistic sound, and lunged at me again, nails bared. I was ready. I sidestepped smoothly, like a dancer executing a well-rehearsed move, letting her stumble past me, her own momentum carrying her into a rather undignified sprawl on the wet, unforgiving pavement. "Damn, did you see that move?" a young man in the crowd yelled out, followed by a ripple of surprised laughter and a smattering of spontaneous applause. "This lady's got some serious fire." I turned to the onlookers, gave a little wave and a genuine grin. "Thanks." Then I walked away, the persistent drizzle on my face feeling like a cool, cleansing baptism. Free. Gloriously, utterly, and irrevocably free. Back at Joan's warm, welcoming house, the phone rang. It was the funeral service company I'd prepaid months ago when the cancer diagnosis felt like a death sentence. "Hello, ma'am," the familiar, now slightly exasperated voice on the other end said. "Just our routine check-in. It's, been quite a while past the initial time frame we discussed." I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh that bubbled up from deep within. "I believe it's safe to say I won't be needing your excellent services anytime soon. Thank you." Perhaps it was, indeed, time for that overdue medical checkup. The results were, in the doctor's own words, miraculous. Spontaneous remission. The cancer cells that had once threatened to consume me were gone. Vanished. "It's rare, but it does happen, Madam Brooks," he said, his face lit with a smile of genuine pleasure. "Your body, your spirit, has done something truly extraordinary." He even asked if I'd be willing to share my story for a medical podcast he was involved with. Real patients, real miracles. Tears welled in my eyes. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of a profound sense of a second chance at life. "Absolutely," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I would be honored." Life began to unfurl in vibrant, unexpected ways. The dance classes I'd started, so tentatively at first, became a source of pure joy, a passion. Hip-hop, surrounded by energetic youngsters who soon dubbed me Cool Margaret. My dance video, the one Sylvia had helped me create as a celebration of feeling alive, even gained a bit of positive traction online, separate from all the scandal. A few weeks after the dramatic denouement at City Hall, a small, unmarked envelope arrived in the mail. Inside, another flash drive. My heart gave a familiar lurch. Not again. But this one was different. It contained a single, short video file. Mason. His small, earnest face filled the screen, filmed in secret, likely on Melissa's tablet in the quiet of his room. "Grandma," he whispered, his eyes wide and serious. "I know you left because no one listened to you, but I did. I heard you, Grandma, and I miss you, and I love you." He glanced quickly over his shoulder, then back at the camera, his voice dropping even lower. Mommy says things are different now. I hope you're happy, Grandma." The tears came then, not of sorrow, but of a deep, resonant love that warmed me to my core. That little boy, with his innocent wisdom, he'd seen. He'd understood more than all the adults in his life combined. It wasn't about taking sides. It was about being heard, being valued. Melissa came to see me about a year later. She looked changed, worn. The polished, ever-smiling veneer was gone, replaced by a quiet weariness. "Margaret," she began, her voice subdued, I want to apologize. I was naive, so selfish. I thought as long as I was comfortable, nothing else truly mattered. I never saw, never understood, how much you were carrying all those years." Her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Brian, he's drinking too much, shutting down, avoiding everything. He's turning into his father, and I'm the one left picking up the pieces, holding everything together. I finally understand, Margaret. Leaving wasn't selfish, it was incredibly brave." I handed her a tissue, my heart surprisingly calm. "You're finally the Melissa I always hoped to meet," I said gently. There was no triumph in her pain, only a quiet sense of peace, of closure. Brian followed a month or so after that. He mumbled a clumsy apology about misunderstandings. He and Melissa were divorcing, he told me. "Mom," he said, his voice low, his gaze fixed on his shoes. I'm sorry." "Real kindness, Brian," I told him, my voice gentle but firm. is loving yourself enough not to make others pay the price for your own cowardice. You are not your father. You never have to be, but you do need to step up now. For Mason, he needs you. I stood and pulled him into a brief, forgiving hug. Forgiveness, I was learning, was as much a gift to oneself as to the other. My life now? It is, unequivocally, mine. I partnered with a bright young entrepreneur, and our small online business, curating artisanal food baskets, my old market stall skills, reimagined for a new era, is thriving. I travel with Joan whenever the mood strikes. I'm learning French, with plans for a grand European adventure next year. I volunteer at a local senior centre, teaching simple dance movements, watching as tired eyes light up with rediscovered joy and expression. I often stand before the mirror, tracing the lines etched by time onto my face. They're not flaws, they are maps of survival, testaments to stories lived, battles fought and won. I spent the vast majority of my life trying to please others, to fit into molds not of my own making. Now, in this precious reclaimed time, I'm finally, deeply learning to love myself. Growing old isn't about fading away into the background. It's about stepping boldly into your own light, on your own terms. I am Margaret. I am no one's shadow, no one's possession. I am simply, unapologetically, wonderfully me. And I love, truly love, the woman I've become. The world still holds so many dances waiting to be danced, so many songs waiting to be sung, and as long as I'm clapping for myself, I know the cheers will always follow.